All right, Lauren, we're going to learn how to shade in a few different ways, okay? Now, the way you've been shading is the smudge technique, which you're doing pretty well, and it has some drawbacks though, okay? So let me demonstrate what you're doing, okay? So you're laying down some pencil, okay, on the page, okay? Like this. All right, so for example, and then you're taking your finger and you're blending it with your finger. Now there's what's good about it is that it does create a nice blending. You know, it does create a nice shade. Okay, it blends fairly well. But the downside is that you don't have a lot of control. You can't be very precise. You're only as precise as the width of your finger. You know, you can't get more detailed than that. So that makes it kind of not a good way of shading for you know, small detailed areas. Okay. So, although blending with your finger is okay, there's some other shading techniques you should learn too. Like the next one. Now I'm going to shade a sphere, okay? So I'm just going to draw a circle, okay? Rough circle like so. Okay. Shading a circle or a sphere is a good way to practice your shading, okay? All right? So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. That's clearly not a perfect circle. All right. But let's say the light source is coming from this direction, okay? That would mean that this part of the ball or sphere is going to be lit, okay? So the light source is going to hit here, okay? And then from this point outwards, it's going to get darker and darker and darker, where it's darkest back here and lightest up here, okay? So this technique I use a lot, where I start shading the darkest area first. So that's going to be back here. So let's say I'm shading right here, okay? And I'm not pressing hard. That's the point, is you don't want to press hard, okay? You're just going to shade back and forth, following the contour of the sphere, okay? Back and forth, okay? Now here's another tip. When you're drawing, it's good to have a protection sheet under your hand so you don't smudge the stuff that's underneath of it. Say I had drawing here, if I had something drawn here, if I'm moving my hand back and forth, I would smudge it and it would look like that, which we don't want, of course, okay? So anyways, put a protection piece down. So that's what I'm doing here, all right? So I'm just going back and forth. Okay, nice and light. I'm not putting a lot of pencil down, just nice and light. Okay, all right. Now, once I get away from the edge, I like to use circles. On the edge, you have to kind of follow the contour of the shape because, you know, you don't want to color outside the lines. But now that I'm outside of the edge, I like to use circles. Okay, so I'm using pretty broad circles. Okay, back and forth. Okay. Still following the general shape of the sphere here, okay? Now you want to shade enough so that those circles that you're drawing to get the shading disappear, that you can't see them as well anymore. You don't want to see the technique in your finished product. You want to see the object you're drawing and not any of the technique. Okay? Now notice that I don't have much of a gradient. There's no dark and light areas at this point, okay? And I don't want any, okay? I just want to make everything even, okay? Now I've gotten it this far, and I think I'm going to stop here because now we're going to talk about the next phase, okay? All right, so I have the shading going on here. All right, we're good. We're good here. Not bad. Okay, I like it. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning here and do the same thing again. But now instead of coming out this far, I'm going to come out about this far. Okay? Now what this is going to do is put more pencil down on the paper and overlap areas I've already done and make those areas darker. Okay, so watch. So now I'm not pressing any harder. I want you to know that. I'm not pressing any harder. But by putting more pencil on the page, it's making areas I've already covered darker. Not that I'm pressing harder, but because I'm just overlapping existing areas. Okay. All right. You can vary the pressure a little bit to account for areas that aren't gradated as well. All right, so I did another area here. Okay, so I went out just a little bit further. So I'm going to make a marking here. So the first one I went out that far. The next one I went out about that far. And the next one I'm going to try to go about that far. Okay, so I'm going to start back here like I was. Okay, now I'm putting even more pencil down. Not pressing any harder. But because I'm adding more pencil, the areas that I'm coloring in now, shading in now, are darker. Okay. All right. And again, I want to get to about here. So I'm going to follow the contour of the sphere around that far. Okay. And you can start to see that I'm getting a gradation going on. All right, now the next bit of shading, I'm going to get to about here. Okay. Not pressing any harder, just laying down more pencil. Okay. Now the reason why we like to use circles is because circles never reveal a consistent stroke line. Since they are going in a circle, they overlap in such a way that you never see, just that, where you can see the strokes going in the same direction all the time. A circle, the stroke is literally going in all directions because it's going in a circle. All right? So that's what we're doing, okay? All right, and then lastly, I'm going to come up to about here, and I'm going to add one more layer. But I have to be very careful not to color outside the lines. Okay. Okay. Circles, just small circles. Okay. All right. So as you can see, now I have a pretty good gradient. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and I'm going to try to correct any areas where, like this one, where I can see a hard line. This should be smooth. So I'm going to try to fill that in by adding more pencil. Okay. All right, so I'm hiding that a little bit. All right, same thing here. Now you may hear on camera that the pencil starts to sound gritty. That's because I stayed on one side of the pencil too long. You want to rotate your pencil so that you don't get a flat spot on the tip. If you rotate your pencil a lot, you'll actually maintain a pretty good point on it. And you want to have that point on it generally. So don't forget to rotate your pencil. All right. So I'm just addressing areas where it doesn't look as even. Okay. All right. So now we have a decent gradation. Okay. It looks not bad. All right. So pretty good. Now, this ball looks like it's floating in space. So we have to let there be a shadow cast on the ground. Now, the shadow in drawing is all about capturing highlights and shadows. That's one of the main things you should remember about drawing, is that you're really not drawing lines to outline things, to outline objects. What you're doing is you should think about capturing the light and the darkness of things. The light and darkness of things is what makes things look realistic. If you look out in the world around you, there are no outlines separating one object to another, like there are in cartoons. So if you want to draw realistically and not like a cartoon, you have to avoid outlines. See, this line on the ball would not exist. We wouldn't The only way we would see this outline here is that there would be a difference in color or shade between it and the background. Okay? So getting shading right is important to getting realism right, because shading is about creating a difference between light and dark. That difference in light and dark is what gives us the shapes we see. All right? So we have to make this ball look like it's sitting on a table. So rather than draw a table, I'm just going to draw the shadow cast upon the table. So the shadow is always going to mimic the shape of the object that's casting it, but it's going to be elongated. So the light source is coming from here. So if, let's say, the surface is like this, then it's going to cast a shadow sort of like this, okay? The ball sits about right here, so it's going to cast a shadow that looks like this, roughly. Okay? Again, we're just making stuff up, okay? It doesn't have to be in that direction, but that's how I see it. Now, same thing. I am going to use my circle technique to cast that shadow outwards. All right, so same idea. Start with some circles. Back and forth. Okay. Now shadows don't always gradate outward. Sometimes they are the same shade all the way to their edge. It just depends on the light source. If it's a very direct light source with no diffusion, think of diffusion like having a lampshade on, right? Direct light source would be no lampshade, okay? Very harsh light, right? That would make a very clean edge on the shadow. But a diffused light, like a light coming in through the curtains or through a lampshade, it would be diffused. It would bounce all over the room. And so the edge of the shadow would be very, very soft. And it would gradate a bit. So for me, I think this light source is close. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. It's close. So the edge of the shadow, here and here, is going to be pretty distinct, okay? It won't be gradated, okay? Keep on drawing my circles. In this case, it's more like ovals, because ovals fits the contour of the shape, the shadow we're trying to render here, okay? And actually, I don't like how this curves around, so I'm going to give it a little bit more width here. Okay, like this, and a little bit like this. Good. All right. Now, I do like, there's going to be less light hitting here because there's no room for the light to get in there. So I'm going to make this darker. So I'm going to go in again, add some more shading in here, thus making this area darker. Okay, and then gradually bringing it out. Okay, do it again. And gradually bring it out. Okay. Notice that this technique is better than that technique in that I can get very precise. I can shade in there, get very precise with my shading in these detailed regions. Whereas here, if I was smudging, I'd be smudging things I didn't intend to smudge. Okay. And this is a sphere. It's a very simple shape. Imagine if we were trying to get inside the corner of like a tear duct of an eyeball, right? That's very, very small detail, but we'd have to still shade it. We couldn't smudge that. We'd smudge the whole eyeball. All right, so this is what we got. So this is the ball sitting on the table. Notice we didn't have to draw the table. The table is implied by the fact that we cast a shadow upon it, okay? So shading is about creating a difference between light and dark, putting the dark in the places where the light can't reach, and leaving the exposed paper to the areas of the object where the light is the most intense. And then gradating between those two areas, from the shadow to the highlight. Okay? I hope that helps, Lauren. Good luck. And you've been doing great. You've been doing great. Your drawing has been excellent. All right. Love you. Bye.